My never I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there. I see them yopo.
Ghana stands still as emotion run high in a moment that touches the very soul of a nation. Veteran journalist Kwesi Pratt found himself in an unforgettable encounter with Omane, Boamah, Mutala, Sapon, and others. What unfolded next left even the strongest hearts in tears. Stay with us as we bring you the full emotional story that capturing headlines and stirring the nation's spirits. Please, before we go, I would like you to subscribe to PENDREAM TV. Hit the notification bell on to keep you updated. Thank you.
Yeah, Alaji. And when you see the panel itself, you'll be. But they created quite a family environment on the show. Has always been the way the show has been, welcoming of new people and giving them that feeling. So it was so sad. But, well, Comrade, we're listening to you.
Well, I mean, first of all, I like to say that Pan-African television and Alaji have been most fortunate. You know, perhaps this is one of the media houses that is run with meager resources. There are no resources at all. In fact, setting up this station was a huge adventure. And we survived almost 10 years, I guess. And the reason why we have survived is that there are so many people who give off their time and their intellect to make us produce the programs that we produce today. Today we are discussing an air crash. And how many stations have been fortunate to get somebody like Ninoy, who is a certified pilot, to sit in this discussion and give us his insights. So if today's program has value and so on, one of the reasons why it has value is the participation of Ninoy, who is here for free, just out of dedication and so on. You understand? And there are many of them, Jifa, Solo, many people. And it's within this context that I want to remember people like Dr. Omane Boamah and Dr. Mutala, you know, and so on. They have made us what we have become today. They've contributed a great deal. And for that, we want to salute them. You understand? We want to really salute them for the contributions that they have made for the advancement, not just of Pan-African television, but of the Ghanaian media. You know, I'd like to start off with Dr. Omane Boamah. And today I'd like to tell a story that I've never told before. And I tell this story in tribute to somebody who could have been my son, you know, was still my younger brother. I'd met Dr. Omane Boamah in circumstances that I will describe later. But I had recurring malaria. I mean, I could get malaria every month, sometimes in less than a month. I've been through many hospitals. I've done all kinds of tests and so on. So one day, I had a conversation with Dr. Omane Boamah about my condition, you know. And I remember him telling me that there was one doctor that he respected a lot. And that doctor he described as a doctor of doctors. Now, interestingly, that doctor was a young man. He wasn't one of these old professors and so on. I mean, he was talking about Dr. Neil Lante Blankson. Dr. Neil Lante Blankson, who dabbles in music and so on, you know, and was a very close friend of Omane. So his suggestion was that, look, we should sit down with Neil and Tay Blankson and maybe we can find a solution to what I was going through. But then he told me that in my case, his suggestion was that I should take camoquine. He thought that 2 doses of camoquine, will resolve the problem. Now, mind you, at the time, camoquine was no longer in use. I mean, those were the days where we were using artesunate and those kind of things. And camoquine was completely outdated and so on. So, even me, I was wondering. I mean, I had no medical experiences, so I was wondering. I mean, camoquine. And he said, yes, camoquine. So I discussed it with friends of mine who were doctors, and they said, no, not camoquine. Camoquine is no longer in use and so on. But somehow I was desperate, because every month down with malaria. And you know how devastating malaria can be and so on. So eventually, I developed the confidence and I did what Dr. Boamah advised. And my goodness, I don't remember the last time I had malaria. He was not just a politician. He was not just an activist. He was a medical practitioner, and a good one at that. I don't know how he came to find out that camoquine could treat my condition. I don't know how. And I'm not a doctor, but I've gone through the literature and so on, and I have not found anything which suggests that the condition I had, camoquine was the answer. But he found it, and that's extraordinary. You understand? Indeed, through him, I came to appreciate some of the things that young doctors can do, And I don't know how my wife is going to take what I'm going to say, I don't know how she's going to take it. Because people's medical conditions are supposed to be private and so on. But I said that today in salutation to young doctors like Omane, Boamah, Neil and Tay Blankson and others. Look, my wife became very sick. And she started losing weight, She couldn't even lift her handbag. She was dying before our eyes. You understand? We had gone to see specialists of all kinds. They had done tests, they'd taken samples to South Africa and so on. And she was dying, slowly dying. So again, Omane, Boamah and Neil and Tay Blankson put their heads together and so on. And I remember in one of those meetings, Neil and Tay Blankson saying that, look, it could be sarcoidosis. I'd never heard of sarcoidosis before. Very rare disease. You Google and see. If you read the literature, sarcoidosis happens to people who live near airports. Proximity to airports, that's one of the conditions. Proximity to airports. Very rare disease, sarcoidosis. And I think it happens 3 to 1 million or something, very rare sarcoidosis. So how did Neil and Tay Blankson come to suspect sarcoidosis? So immediately, there was a conference of doctors to examine the reports and so on, and Neil and Tay Blankson was in the conference. And he said his suspicion was sarcoidosis. So after a lengthy discussion, the rest of the doctors were persuaded that it could be sarcoidosis. And do you know the treatment for sarcoidosis? Hormone treatment, hormone. Very cheap. Cost nothing. And in no time, she came back to life and has survived for 20 years and more. Wow. You understand? So these young doctors, some of these young doctors actually deserve our salutation. Look, they save lives. Omane is dead today, but I can imagine the number of lives he has saved. Unbelievable, you understand? Now, the circumstances in which I met Omane Boamah were interesting. I've heard Ankara Tuahoy say his own about how he recruited him into the National Democratic Congress and so on. That is true. I was with them. But you see, I had met Omane Boamah as president of the National Union of Ghana Students. And this was the time, I'm sure you will remember, when he was engaged in a battle with the Kufuor administration over the disbursement of Get Fund funds. And for me it was interesting, because here was a young man who was a card-bearing member of the New Patriotic Party, and yet felt that he had to carry on his duty as president of the National Union of Ghana Students, regardless of his party affiliation. I was engaged in a serious battle with the Kufuor administration. So I helped him. He was a young man. I helped him with his publicity, gave him advice, and so on and so on. But it didn't end there. We had decided to form the Committee for Joint Action, you know. And I remember those who were in the meeting. I remember very clearly the father of Alhaji Mahmoud Bawumia's wife, Samira Bawumia, was in the meeting. He was a very strong activist. Ramadan. He was in the trenches against the MPP. Sure. And I remember that very, very well. And there were many others. Obeda Samoa was in that first meeting. Dr. Obeda Samoa was in that first meeting. This chap, who is still a member of parliament, Bitziding, was in that meeting, and so on. So we had agreed that we're going to form the Committee for Joint Action. The late Oforiata, Eagle Party, he was the leader of the Eagle Party and so on. They were all in that meeting, and many others, you know. So we had agreed to form the Committee for Joint Action. But when I looked around, it was just the known figures who had been battling with the NPP over the years. And I said, no. For our public image, we needed to get somebody who was not like us. You understand? Somebody who could claim some connection to the New Patriotic Party. Authentic connection to the New Patriotic Party. So we went through, and I remembered Omane Boamah, and I said, no, I thought that that young man would do the trick. And I actually recommended that he should be the first person to read the first statement of the committee at a press conference in Accra. So everybody agreed, and I was tasked with the responsibility of looking for him and persuading him to read the statement. So eventually I found the young man, and I said, look, my task is to persuade you to read this statement, you know. And there was no hesitation whatsoever. And I remember clearly what he told me, that he was a member of the New Patriotic Party, but Ghana was far more important than any political party or association. So Dr. Omane Boamah became part of the Committee for Joint Action. And that eventually led to his migration from the New Patriotic Party to the National Democratic Congress. Now, there's one point that I like to make, which for me is important. You see, all these young men who became ministers and leading figures in the NPP and NDC, check their backgrounds. Check their backgrounds. Not all of them originally belong to the parties to which they belong. There's a young man who became very big in the New Patriotic Party. And my recall is that he was special assistant to Dr. David Kwesi in the National Reform Party, and eventually rose to become a giant in the New Patriotic Party and so on. I know somebody who became a very prominent minister in the Akufo-Addo administration, and those of you who went to take no. I am deliberately not mentioning names.
But you have to mention names, but this is a record. No, only. You must let the history records reflect.
So that proceed the way he wants to.
Yes.
It's an intervention needed, especially in this day and age.
But this young man was one of the most strident critics of the New Patriotic Party. In fact, he was a communicator of the National Democratic Congress, and eventually emerged as one of the huge ministers, in the New Patriotic Party and so on. And there are others. I mean, recently, we were in the Accra International Conference Center for a ceremony, and President Kufuor came. He was sitting in the VIP lounge, so I went to see him. And as we were talking, a very prominent minister in the National Democratic Congress walked in, So we had a chat, and then he left. And then President Kufuor said, "This is my boy, I said, "How is he your boy?" And he said, when he was contesting to become president of the National Union of Ghana Students, Mr. Francis Poku,
Yes.
who was then the National Security Advisor, brought him to me, that is Kufuor, and we gave him all the assistance he needed to become NUC's president.
Because I went with him.
Oh, so you know the story. Okay, no problem. No.
You see, this is where I disagree.
But now he is.
Yeah, so if you know him, it's better. Okay. So I was shocked. And then Kufuor said, now look at how he's treating us. And indeed, he has become one of the most strident critics, opponents of the New Patriotic Party. Not just on the basis of their policy and so, but even of their history that he was a part of. And what really surprises me is that when they transition like this, they then begin to play some kind of mind-blowing politics in which everything about the other must be wrong, and so on. And they do that to justify their inclusion. You understand? But it doesn't help the nation at all. You understand? But maybe one day, this history will be told in its fullness. But I'm talking about Dr. Omane Boamah. I have come to respect him a lot. And that is not to say that there were not moments that I was very unhappy with him. And all of those who were close to us know that there were moments in which I was very, very, very unhappy with him. But that's normal. We are all human, aren't we? And we can't agree 100% all the time. We can't please ourselves all the time. So there are moments of friction, there are moments of disagreement, but the important thing is that in spite of those moments of friction and disagreement, we still manage to converge around national consensus. And that is why, again, I want to salute Dr. Omane Boamah, because on many occasions, he managed to rise above these moments of distress and moments of disagreements, and to behave as a young man, young politician who loved his country. You understand? Unfortunately for me, I haven't met or spoken to him since December 7th last year. I haven't spoken to him, I just saw him in person once, and that has been it. But of course, it's not his fault. I've also not made the effort, to get in touch with him and so on. But this is Dr. Omane Boamah. I never for one moment thought that he would be Minister of Defense. Never for one moment thought that he would be Minister of Defense one day. First and foremost, because this is damn good doctor. He served in the 37 military hospital for a while, but that doesn't make you an expert on military affairs. It doesn't give you, But President Dramani Mahama must have seen something in him that the rest of us may not have seen, and he became Minister of Defense. He's married and has children, and like most of the people who were involved in the crash, my sympathy goes to their families. Perhaps the families would even suffer more than those of them who perished in this crash. I've known Mutala Mohammed quite closely. He has been a pillar for us in Pan-African television, and also particularly on this program and the Good Morning Africa show. You understand? And indeed, I'm going to say it anyway. You see, when this matter occurred, I got the information, somebody sent me an information that there had been a helicopter crash and that Omane Boamah was on board, and that they didn't know what had happened. The security services were still trying to trace the plane. So even at that time, we did not know that the people on board have died. We thought that they could be rescued. But we had only Omane Boamah's name. A few minutes later, other details kept popping in. And all of you would agree that some of the names that were mentioned were not on the flights. So the information we got did not include Mutala on the flight. So, Sana, when the news hit us that Mutala was on the flight, wailing, many of the staff just burst into wailing. I didn't know he was so popular in this station. So very popular in this station, they were crying. And indeed, some of them told me personal stories of their engagement with him outside their professional circles that I didn't know about. I didn't know that Mutila was so loved in this station. And it has to do partly with his humility. Anybody could relate to him. He was so friendly to everybody. He listened to everybody. He's not one of those ministers who had a lot of resources to spread around. I've been friends with Mutala for a long time. I've never drank a bottle of Coke bought by him. No, I'm serious.
He will tell you that it's not there.
No, I have never asked. He's never offered. He's never taken me to lunch or dinner or nothing. Our friendship has been around work. And my impression has always been that he doesn't have too much to throw around. So if he was so loved, there must be other reasons why he was so loved. And my impression is that it had to do with his humility. And that humility hit me once when he actually said that he did not want to be referred to as an honorable member of parliament. And I'm sure all of you have heard him say that. And that he preferred to be called comrade. And on one occasion, I told him that comrades don't look like you and don't sound like you. You are always holding the tasbah and referring everything to God and so on.
Oh my God.
And that to be a comrade, you needed to have a scientific attitude and so on. He said, but there are different kinds of comrades. Of course there are different kinds of comrades. And he was a particularly different kind of comrade. And you see, Sana, there's something that I've learned in my life. Those who think that they can only work with those who share their principles, ideals, and so on in entirety, they do nothing in life. Because in this life, it is so very difficult to find two people who are identical in thought, in belief, and so on. It is almost impossible. So, in this life, if you want to make progress, what you do is that at every time, you look at the congregation of forces that can be marshaled to pursue a certain objective. It is the same principle which underlines what is called the broad front idea. So today, we are opposed to e-levy. Who and who are opposed to e-levy? Some may be religious, some may be Marxist, some may be right-wing, and so on. The ability to congregate all of these forces to achieve that objective shows those who want to make change and those who want to live in the ivory tower and dream dreams that would never be materialized. That will never materialize, you understand? And it is because of this that I have managed to work with all the different political forces in our country at different times to achieve different objectives, whilst retaining my commitment to the ideals of Marxism and so on, and building the instruments for the pursuit of that objectives. When it becomes necessary to work with others in order to advance the struggle, we have. And people like Mutala, Mohammed, and so on have done so very much for the struggle to build a new Ghana. They've done so very much, contributed so very much to that struggle. Then there's the vice chairman of the National Democratic Congress, Mr. Sapon. I got to know him initially as Ashanti Regional Minister. And we became friends. So every time I visited Kumasi, I would go to the residency, we would sit down and have a chat and so on. But there was something very significant about him. Something very, very significant about him. You see, it was Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah who started that experiment. Under Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, you needn't hail from or be resident in a particular area to qualify to become a member of parliament for that area. So it was that Nkrumah himself came from Nkrofo and was a candidate in Accra Central, today's Odododio constituency. And so on. And that was part of the effort to unite the country, to rise above ethnicity and so on. And I thought that it was a bold effort. That experiment was continued by General Kutu Achampong. And let me tell you honestly, that if you are grading leaders of this country, for me, Nkrumah is number one. General Kutu Achampong is number two. And the statistics are there. Look at the number of houses he built. Look at his orientation. This is a man who came into government, soldier man, from Swedro Business College and said, we would not deal with the World Bank and the IMF. Who said that our debts would not be paid. Whose government managed in 3 years to make Ghana self-sufficient in food production. Look at the estate houses we have built around the country for all the workers, Dansuma estates, Snake housing, and so on. Look at his contribution to power production, and so on. Clearly stands out. You understand? Now, one of the things he did was to continue the experiment of Nkrumah. So, Lieutenant Colonel or Colonel Akwe Norte, who had nothing to do with the Northern region in terms of origin and so on, became the Northern Regional Minister. Minila became the Eastern Regional Minister and so on. Colonel Bedu became Ashanti Regional Minister and so on. He moved them around. He wanted to unite the country and so on. So when Mr. Sapon was removed from the Ashanti region and I think sent to the Western region as minister, I was so happy. Because I thought that idea of Nkrumah and Achampong was being reintroduced and so on. Unfortunately, it didn't go far. But he excelled as Ashanti regional minister and also excelled as Western regional minister. And some of my colleagues on this panel have already spoken about his affability, easily approachable, had no chips on his shoulder, and so on. Can you believe that until this plane crash, and I'm being very honest with you, I didn't know he was vice chairman of the NDC. I didn't. I knew he was a prominent member of the NDC, but I didn't know that he was vice chairman of the NDC. And many people are surprised. When many people heard that he was vice chairman of the NDC, they were surprised. You know, this is a politician who became a minister, regional minister in 2 different regions, and from all we are hearing, has been very active in the NDC campaign and so on, and yet he was not known publicly.
Was even a mayor.
Yes, he was a mayor first and so on. Now, that's a testimony. That's a huge testimony about who he was. You understand? And in his case, the tragedy is even deeper. Because he was not supposed to be on the aircraft. Yeah. He was not supposed to be on the aircraft, from what I'm hearing. Somebody else was supposed to be on the aircraft, and he said he couldn't go. So eventually, he was appointed to replace somebody on the aircraft. And it's the same story for Mutala.
Before that, she was in the meeting.
Yes. You understand? Same story for Mutala. Mutala was not supposed to be there at all. He just happened by some accident, coincidence, to be on the flight, and he died. Then there's my good friend, and I have many good friends who perished in this flight, Alaji Miniru, whom I've known over a long period of time, because of his very, very special friendship with my daughter Amma and her husband. They've been very close friends. They've actually gone to his hometown to stay with him and so on. So the friendship between them is very strong. They got to know him before me. But interestingly, he's also the brother-in-law of Hassan Ligby. Hassan Ligby, who today is the CEO of the State Transport Corporation and used to be with the Metro Mass Transport Company also, you know. And Hassan is like a brother, yes. You know. My sister went to school with him and so on. So we meet on a regular basis. And I can't count the number of times I've had lunch with Alaji, either in his house or Hassan's house. You know, on occasions when there have been anything to celebrate in my house, he's been there. You know, so I know him that very well. I mean, excellent gentleman. Excellent gentleman. And one of the things that I came to know about him is his passion for the National Democratic Congress, unrelenting passion for the National Democratic Congress. You know, perhaps the 2 most valuable things that I found in my dealings with him were his commitment to Islam and also to the National Democratic Congress. I think this is a gentleman who goes around holding a tasbih. All those who know him, he goes around holding a tasbih all the time. I mean, these days, how many people go around holding tasbih? He's sitting in his car, he's holding a tasbih. We are going for lunch, he's holding a tasbih and so on. You know, he was such a devout Muslim. I'm not. He was. Okay? Now, his exit must be very painful. Not just because he died in these circumstances, but last night, I was told that his wife is on admission. The wife was unable to deal with these shocks. And the wife is on admission as we speak. Well, I don't know about this morning, but as of last night, around 11 p.m., the wife was on admission. Then I'm told that his two sisters were also on admission because of the shock. Well, you know, so this should tell you the impact that his exit has made on those who are close to him. Indeed, last night, I was in the house of Hassan Ligby, together with Alhaji Aminu, who used to be a regional minister and so on, and other friends. And the feeling was mutual. Everybody felt a huge sense of loss, you know. With regards to the military personnel, I didn't know any of them personally. I don't even remember encountering any of them. But you see, when these things happen, the stories are told. All you have to do is to go to social media and you hear the stories and so on. And it is clear that these were men, soldiers, who loved their country and who have served their country in distinguished capacities. I'm told that the squadron leader is one of the best pilots that the Air Force has. And there are many, many soldiers who have said very, very interesting things about him and how he does his job and so on. I mean, only this morning, I've also been told that the guy, what is his name, Ernest, is actually a nephew to Chairman, the Chairman at PATV. You know, this guy we call Chairman, Amos Kato. That's his nephew. So he's very close. I didn't know that. You understand? And then we are told that one of them married only recently. We are told that the other had a baby recently and so on. And we are told of one, I think the squadron leader, I'm not sure, who in a spate of 2 months has lost a sister and has lost a brother and so on. So all of this adds up to the tragedy. You know, and I'm sitting here and my imagination is running wild. How did it happen? How did they feel? How did they come to their end? Can you imagine it? Sitting on an aircraft? Being consumed by fire? Was there an explosion? Did they die of shock before they hit the ground? And so I'm just so confused. So confused. When I ask myself these questions, what I get in return is confusion. And Sana, you know, me, I can relate it also to a personal experience. You understand? I can relate it to a personal experience. Perhaps some of you know already. Maybe Sana knows. Around 2011, I was on an aircraft. And the aircraft caught fire in mid-air. Yes. I was on an aircraft. Indeed, Lieutenant Colonel Gbebulati was on that aircraft. And my good friend, the late Justice Hineku, was on that aircraft. And the aircraft caught fire mid-air. So I can relate to this experience. Of course, we survived. I mean, we managed to land, emergency landing, and that day I saw something in Gbebulati that I've not seen in any man. Gbebulati's courage was extraordinary. Never seen that in anybody. The fire service personnel were running away from the fire. Lieutenant Colonel Gbebulati was in a suit and tie. He took over the equipment from them and started fighting the fire. I mean, amazing. In his suit and tie, he was fighting the fire. And this of the fire service personnel only managed to gather courage when he had virtually, you know, subdued the fire to some extent. So I can relate to this. I've been in an aircraft which caught fire mid-air. Mid-air, caught fire. You know, so I can imagine what these 8 men went through. And why? Why did they have to endure this? They have to endure this because the state has failed to take full control of the mineral resources of Ghana and to exploit these mineral resources in the interest of Ghana. The reckless privatization of mining, and that I'm saying, is a manifestation of reckless privatization of mining. It has devastated the land. We will come to that later. Because of this recklessness of promoting senseless private exploitation of resources and so on, look at where we are. If the state had taken control of mining, small scale, big scale, medium scale, and so on, and pursued the dream of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the 8 men would not have died. You understand? So, look, in discussing this tragedy, there are several dimensions that eventually we would have to look at. And I agree fully with my brother Nino that we should let science speak and avoid needless speculation. And in letting science speak, we have to understand the science of sociology, the science of politics, the science of economics, and even the science of history. A lot of people don't think that history is a science. History is a science. History is a science. History is a science.
Because it's replicable.
There are 2 methods. There are 2 methods that Marx and Engels prescribe for the understanding of society. 2 methods. Dialectical materialism and historical materialism. History is a science. Every subject has a scientific outlook and so on. Sure. So we should let science speak in the evaluation of this matter. Let science speak. Let's build up the empirical evidence, not to blame, but to avoid similar occurrences in the future. That is our task. So I am in full agreement with the President for establishing a full-scale committee of inquiry into this matter. That is not to say that this matter could have gone without an inquiry. There's no plane crash anywhere in the world which is not investigated.
There's also even an act.
So when a plane crashes, there will be an investigation. But I'm happy that it is being done in the case of Ghana. And I'm hoping that this investigation would establish the full facts. Already, and I'm sure you've all seen it, there are some people who have jumped onto the anti-Chinese hysteria already. You've seen it.
It's already online.
Clear anti-Chinese hysteria. Chinese technology is not good. It's a Chinese plane and so on. My friends, let's wait for the empirical evidence. Let science speak and so on. Why? Having planes made in Germany crash before.
Oh, American planes.
But even the point is that plane parts, not all will be coming from China.
In fact,
there are other parts that will be coming from Europe, America as well as well.
So some people see this as an opportunity to damage China. I think that it is as bad as that gentleman who is craving to become president did on Wuntumi TV. It's as bad. It's the same thing. You know, and sometimes I can't believe some of these people. I can't believe them. Especially these charlatans in cassock. These charlatans in funny robes, calling themselves bishops, prophets, and archbishops, and so on. My friend, you worship a God. You worship a God. And let's be frank. And that God knows that people are going to die in this horrible way. And that God tells you that people are going to die in this horrible way. And that God has the power to stop it, according to you. And that God allows this to happen. Abba! What kind of a God is that? So they insult their own God all the time. They are always insulting their God. And in any case, of the 32 million people of Ghana, why would God choose somebody like that, to reveal secrets to? So all the good people in this country, they can't see any of them. But you see, all of this is also linked to something which may be considered a national failure. Yes. Look, there are so many television stations in this country. And sometimes when I'm scrolling through the television stations, I come across some of them and I cringe. Who would allow this? Some of the stations, all they do is money doubling. Bring your money and let's double it for you. And we allow it. It is a criminal offense to engage in money doubling and so on. Criminal offense. And yet, criminality is promoted on television. Some of the things that they claim they can do, I cannot repeat on this show.
The sort of things they do.
They claim they can do. I cannot. Making some things bigger and so on. You know what I'm talking about.
Professor Hindu that used to be at KJT and Makola, they have found their way on the TV.
If you want something to become bigger, come and see. I don't want to mention what that something is.
We would like to hear.
Oh, watch television.
No. We would like to hear from you.
No, you won't hear it from my mouth. You understand? So, all these charlatanry has become an industry. And we allow it. You see, Sana, you see, Akrada is in prison. Whatever it is, she had accomplices.
Yes.
Those who provided her with the medium
Absolutely.
through which she convinced people to bring their monies to be doubled are equally guilty.
Absolutely.
They are equally guilty. You understand? So we have allowed a section of our media to promote extreme backwardness. And somebody says it's Bishop something. He's standing in church. He knows where Omane Boamah's office is. And so he says, anybody who has Omane Boamah's number, please call him and tell him to come and see me. It's urgent and so on. Charlatan! Complete charlatan!
But I think the politicians also call them when they do that. And that is what
But who says that there are no charlatans in politics? Who says that there are no charlatans in politics?
It's so sad.
My brother, you know as well as
Yes,
I do. You have been involved in this
I
game for some time.
do.
I've been involved in it for some time. Some of the people you see parading as statesmen and so on, they are not worth anything.
It's true.
Do you know what they do in elections? The concoctions they drink to win elections.
Yes.
They are not counting on your votes. They are counting on the concoctions the madam is preparing for you to go and drink.
I have a question. Let me tell you something.
Do you know the number of white cows are buried alive?
Cows that they are supposed to eat.
I said in 2020, a pastor was...
Oh, charlatans! Charlatans in politics, charlatans in the church, charlatans in the media, charlatans everywhere.
I'm going to say 2020, one pastor came to my home. And
In time like this, our shared pain reminds us of bonds that unite us as a nation. Kwesi Pratt's emotional encounter with Omane, Boamah, Mutala, and Sapon is more than just a story. It's a reflection of our collective grief and resilience. Let's continue to stand together, support one another, and keep the memories of our heroes alive. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates from PENDREAM TV, because the story of Ghana is still being written. Thank you for being with us today. We really appreciate.
Dedi kama mamena PENDREAM TV ase. Na so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.